brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFB-LP 101.9 FM.
The Eau Claire City Council meeting will now come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Beaton.
Here.
Berge.
Here.
Christofferson.
Here.
Emmanuel.
Here.
Gregert.
Here.
Klinkhammer.
Here.
Lohr.
Here.
Weld.
Here.
Worthman. Zhang.
Here.
Worthman.
He's there. He's muted. He's not muted, but okay. Good evening and welcome, everyone, to Monday's May 11th virtual meeting of the Eau Claire City Council. I want to extend our sincere welcome to all of you joining us remotely for this meeting and those of you in chamber. Tonight we are holding public hearings and a public comment period, and then we'll proceed directly into our legislative session following. The Eau Claire City Council conducts public hearings, listening sessions, and public discussion where residents in our community are invited and encouraged to ask questions and weigh in on important decisions we will be making later this evening in our legislative session or in coming weeks and months ahead. We want to thank Valley Media Works for live streaming this proceeding. To those of you not able to join us here to watch, please visit valleymediaworks.org or visit channel 994 on Spectrum Cable. It is also simulcast at 101.9 FM. And you can find past meetings on YouTube under the Chippewa Valley Media Works channel. If you plan to address the council this evening, I will briefly review the protocol. Once an agenda item is introduced, staff will present on that item, and following the presentation, the council may have questions to clarify an issue. We then will open the item for public input. Once the item is open for comment, please raise your hand on the WebEx screen, and I will call on you in the order in which your requests to speak are received. When it is your turn to comment, I will unmute you and ask you to please state your name and your address, and then you can begin sharing your comments. We welcome you to speak for 5 minutes, and I will notify you when there is only 1 minute left. When you have reached 5 minutes, I will then ask that you bring your statement to a close. I will then ask you to lower your hand, and you will then be muted, but are welcome to stay online to listen into the rest of the meeting or share a comment on either of the other two public hearings or public commentary. If you do plan to speak on another item, please follow the same previous procedures when your agenda item is opened. There are times when council members will wish to ask you follow-up questions, so please give us a moment before disconnecting. Again, if you wish to speak on an item that is not listed on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment period. And lastly, if you're not comfortable speaking openly, you can fill out a comment form on the city website comments, and we will check for those comments after the public commentary period this evening. As always, you can email or call council members outside of this meeting anytime, and our contact information can be found on the city website. With that introduction, we'll get on to our first order of business. There are 3 items scheduled for a public hearing on tonight's agenda. The first item is a public hearing on an ordinance rezoning a property located at 2113 Brackett Avenue from R1 to C3P and to adopt the general development plan with site plan for an office with storage and warehouse facilities. Good evening, Mr. Allen. Scott, are you there?
Yes, I am here now.
Yes.
Thank
All right.
you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Good evening, Council President Weld and members of the council.
Good evening.
Good evening. Before you this evening is a request to rezone property, as noted, at 2113 Brackett Avenue, from its current R1 designation to C3P, where the P would adopt the general development plan with site plan for an office and, as noted, warehouse building, which really will include storage and warehouse facilities. We'll move on to the next slide, please. Here's an aerial photograph showing the location of the site in question. As you can see here, this is an aerial photo from 2018. The buildings have since been removed. The site is vacant. It's just under 1 acre in size altogether. The history of the property included 2 single-family homes within this R1 zoning district. And as you can see here, even by the aerial photo, as well as just driving through the area or otherwise navigating through the area in question up to South Hastings Way. The south side of Brackett Avenue has more and more been developed with commercial development over the last few years. Again, both the houses there have been removed. The lot is vacant. Comprehensive plan does note this area as suitable for commercial development. A proposed building, which is shown on the site plan, if we move to the next slide, please. Thank you. The proposed building will be approximately 8,945 square feet with multiple entrances for both employees and customers. About half of it, actually just under half of the building, will be used as office, which is what is on the left side of the screen there, which is the orientation of north. So north is to the left, which is along Brackett Avenue. The remaining just under 4,800 square feet will be warehouse storage, as we noted again, storage and warehouse facilities with 4 individual garage doors. Property is not allowed any outdoor storage. That was not requested by the applicant and was not approved by the Plan Commission or recommended for approval. The applicant can give a little bit of additional information, but did identify and note at the Plan Commission meeting that the intent is essentially like a contractor storage type facility, meaning the 4 storage units along the east, kind of south and east side of the property really will be utilized by those occupying the office suites along Brackett Avenue. So not intended to be rented out as an actual warehouse or storage facility for public use. We'll move on to the next slide, please. This shows some of the drainage for the proposed site. Next slide, please. Again, this shows more specifically the kind of the interior layout and how you see those 4 storage components of the building. Again, to the back of the building, essentially off of Brackett and on the east side. The site plan shows parking lots on the north and east side of the office portion of the building with 17 proposed parking stalls. If we can actually go back 1 slide, if we could. Thank you. You can see here the 2 access points along Brackett Avenue. The one to the west, which is in the lower left part of the screen, is essentially would be reserved for ingress, egress for the office users and customers there. And then the east side, top left of the screen, was really what would be utilized again for that kind of contractor storage to access those 4 units along the side there. So the existing site itself actually does also have 2 driveway entrances. So again, staff had questioned the need for those 2 new driveway entrances, but again, it's not necessarily replacing 1 for 1, but again, have 2 different uses and is acceptable for the engineering standards along here too. You can see in the center, left of the screen, the pedestrian connection. So there's a pedestrian link shown on the site plan to the public sidewalk along Brackett Avenue. The landscape plan shows street trees and foundation plantings. If we can go back, actually 1 more slide, please. This is kind of a mix of the landscaping plan as well as overall site plan. It's a little bit hard to see. It's a little bit grayed out along Brackett Avenue, some of the street trees. The Plan Commission has recommended as a condition of approval. Thank you. You can see there exactly two of those, kind of the bottom left and then the top left would be street trees. But the Plan Commission did recommend approval to add shrubs along the east side of the property line, so which is along the existing commercial into the top of the screen, as well as add additional, you can see it says property boundary there. So adding shrubs on that east side, and then also adding more street trees than just the two that were presented in this drawing. So with that, again, the applicant may have some additional comments to make, but this Plan Commission has recommended approval of the rezoning as well as the general development plan and site plan, with that condition noted to add shrubs along the east side and additional street trees along Brackett Avenue. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Councilmember Worthman.
Yeah, Council President, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Andrew?
So I really appreciate this addition of trees along Brackett and shrubs on the east side. I guess my kind of two-part question, and this comes up from knowing how difficult it is to pull in and out of Brackett. I guess just your thoughts, Mr. Allen, on the turning motion for vehicles that are going to be coming in and out of this facility. And it's kind of a two-part question. That, which I think is really challenging already if you're pulling out of Quick Trip or the driveway just to the east. And the second piece of this is, I think it's Papa John, the pizza place, like that's all a paved area. And I just wonder, is there going to be a delineated street essentially along the driveway on the east side of this building? Because otherwise I could see a lot of people potentially trying to pull up to the storage units kind of through the fully paved areas of those two adjacent properties to the east.
Good question. I'm hoping staff from engineering may be on the line as well. I could answer some of the access questions. I think in terms of connecting to the adjacent properties, the image shown here, there is a separation and hence a request for the condition to add some additional shrubs on the east side that would not have access to property to the east there. And I believe that's, is it Papa Murphy's, is that correct? And then to the west as well. So it would be essentially wholly self-contained. There are no medians or other restricted access on Brackett. Mm-hmm. So yes, there would be full access from both of those driveways. Again, there are two existing driveways currently. As they're shown here, they are further separated, so there's less conflict within the site itself. And again, they're essentially trying to segregate the different users of the site. So kind of contractor storage and their trailers and trucks and such going back and forth on that east side or on the top left entrance, and then the office users at the kind of the northwest part, which is in the bottom left. So that'd be more kind of passenger vehicles, and then of course the pedestrian connection kind of in the middle there, separating the two. I don't know if that answers your questions, or maybe engineering staff may be able to help with turning movements and access to Brackett.
Yeah, that helps. I just wanted to make sure that people aren't going to try to be pulling in from the eastern side, because that's all paved around those two other businesses. I believe it's completely paved.
Correct. That's correct. Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
If Kathy could go back just one more slide. Yeah, if you can zoom in at all, but yeah, you can see exactly as you noted Councilmember Worthman, it is entirely paved, correct, on both those properties to the east. But yeah, there would be a separation there, and I don't want to speak out of turn in terms of the Plan Commission's intent, but that was part of the discussion, was to make sure there was some additional separation there with that added landscape as well.
Oh, I think I misunderstood the landscaping to be along the edge of the building, but you're saying it's on the other side of their driveway.
Correct. It'd be separating that long drive in front of those the storage units. Yep, separating that and the fully paved area, those two properties to the east.
Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, and then about the turning motions in and out, because that is difficult.
Yes, I'm not sure if somebody from engineering is available.
Who? Mr. Solberg.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Good evening.
Good evening. Yes, the traffic on Brackett is challenging. It's one of our busier arterials. With the two driveways like that, it'll help. Well, number one, it'll be challenging to turn left when you're coming out of that. If you're going to go downtown, if there's a heavy eastbound traffic through there, similar to what you have when you come out of Culver's or Taco John's or Quick Trip, it will help with the two driveways, so people can get turned around more comfortably in there or continue their motion so they head out. I would suspect during peak rush hour, you will have some people that would want to normally turn left and they'll get frustrated and they'll turn right. But it's a condition that exists up and down Brackett Avenue, and there really isn't much remedy for that. And I think that the use of this building traffic-wise is a lot lower than some of the adjacent businesses. Mm-hmm. So its overall impact on Brackett would be negligible, but it'll be challenging to turn left coming out of that business on the Brackett during certain times of the day, much as it is elsewhere on there.
Okay, that helps.
Any other questions from council for Mr. Solberg or for Mr. Allen? I don't see any other questions. Mr. Allen, was Mr. Bohan, Sean, was he speaking for the applicant, or?
I believe so, and if Kathy, if you don't mind going ahead a few slides to the elevations. I apologize if we didn't get to that point. Thank you, that will be fine.
Sean?
If Mr. Bohan is on the line, I believe he would be the one to speak on behalf of the applicant, as he did at Plan Commission.
All right, thank you. Sean, are you there? Sean? Sean, are you there? Sean? Hello? Mr. Allen, it doesn't appear to be responding.
Okay, does he show that he is on as an attendee?
I'll try him as a panelist too. Hang on one second. Sean, are you there? Sean? Sean, are you there? Hello?
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you now. Sean?
I really apologize. Had to switch out some other headgear and stuff like that. My name is Sean Bohan. I'm an engineer with Advanced Engineering Concepts. My address, 1504 Sherwin Avenue, Eau Claire. Mr. Allen and Mr. Solberg did a great job in presenting the project. I just wanted to add a couple things. I guess the first one being that this building is going to be for a property management company, and that the garages, the storage areas, are going to end up being for things that are needed for the property management, i.e. like lawnmowers, plows, that type of stuff. So they're not looking at going ahead and renting out those storage areas that was referenced as basically warehousing along the east side. That would be one thing. And then, again, since this is a property management company, and what Mr. Solberg alluded to is that the traffic is going to be substantially less compared to the other businesses that are in the area, the restaurants, C-store, that type of stuff. A few employees will be working there. You'll have some people coming in the mornings to do the maintenance and stuff like that, or pick up the different stuff in the warehouse and going out to the job sites. And then you'll have some people coming and signing leases, but it's not something that's a very high traffic business. And then other than that, we don't have any issues, and the applicant and owner doesn't have any issues with the conditions that the Planning Commission placed on this project. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Is there any questions from council? Councilmember Gregor.
Thank you, President Weld. Mr. Bohan, the recommendation from the condition from Plan Commission regarding street trees and the shrubs on the east side of the property, do you have any more information as to how feasible that'll be to do both of those things?
As far as the shrubs, we don't see there being an issue along that eastern property line. Trying to get some trees in that area without, I guess, encroaching onto the neighboring property might be a little difficult, but certainly some shrubs can go in there. I think it's like 6 feet that we end up having. And then as far as the street trees, we do end up having, the boulevard that ends up being out there. There is some electric lines, that type of stuff. We'll certainly end up doing what we can as far as getting some more street trees out on Brackett.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Councilmember Worthman, did you have a question? I'm not seeing any other questions from council. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 2, which was a public hearing on an ordinance rezoning the property located on the southwest corner of Jeffers Road and Prairie Lane from, that was a public hearing, so I don't know if there's anybody from the public that wishes to speak on the last agenda item before I call that second one. Was there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Seeing none, again, agenda item number 2, a public hearing on an ordinance rezoning property located on the southwest corner of Jeffers Road and Prairie Lane from C2 to R3P and to adopt the general development plan for multifamily apartment buildings. Mr. Petrie, are you there?
Thank you, Council President Weld. Members of the council, before you tonight is a rezoning with a general development plan, as noted by Mr. Weld, from C2 to R3P. This one is just a general development plan with a final site plan to be reviewed at a later date by the Plan Commission if the zoning is approved this evening. The current property is on the corner of Jeffers Road or crossing Prairie Lane, as shown on the map. It's currently zone C2. To the west is E.O. Johnson, zone C2P and I1P. To the north is a vacant farmland, zone R1A. To the east and to the south are zone R3P, similar to the request this evening. The map shown in the 300-foot buffer of notifications this evening. You can go to the next slide, please. This parcel has been vacant and for sale for many years. It's been approximately 2.7 acres in size. The comprehensive plan notes it as commercial and/or medium to high density residential. As you can see on the aerial photograph this evening, there has been multiple multifamily developments around it, along Jeffers Road and to the south and to the north. Then to the west, it transitions more into commercial and industrial, again with the vacant land to the north. The offer to purchase this evening is for the R3P, as shown on the next slide. The applicant is requesting multifamily. The proposal is for 1 lot, 3 buildings. Each building having 8 units total, for a total of 24 units within the 2.7 acres. There would be 1 access drive onto Prairie Lane, and that was approved by the engineering department along with the fire department. It's the farthest to the west of the site, away from the intersection of Jeffers Road and Prairie Lane. Each of the buildings would have a mixture of 2 and 3 unit units, with each unit having a 2-car garage as shown. The final site plan again will be reviewed at a later date by the Plan Commission if the council this evening approves this request. During the Plan Commission meeting last week, it was noted the noise along North Crossing 312 is difficult. There is existing multifamily to the south and to the east. This site doesn't have any existing trees along the North Crossing and is pretty much vacant for the most part with no vegetation. During the Plan Commission meeting, it was noted that the applicant could potentially add trees and a potential berm. This evening request does have approval for the final site plan to review the noise treatment along 312 right away. Again, the comprehensive plan notes this area as commercial and/or medium to high density residential, and the general development plan is consistent with the adjacent and nearby residential development. The grading and drainage and public utilities and traffic and transit is noted in the report. The applicant did provide a narrative explaining the setbacks and density and the units that are proposed. I would note that Jeffers Road is due to be reconstructed in 2022. The Plan Commission did recommend approval of the request, again with 2 conditions: approval from the engineering department, grading and drainage, and then the noise abatement as noted in the report along 312. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions this evening.
Does council have any questions for Mr. Petrie? Councilmember Worthman, did you have a question? Does any other council members have questions for Mr. Petrie? Seeing none, I'll open it up to the public. Mr. Petrie, are you there still?
Yes, I am.
Was there an applicant?
The applicant would be Sean Bohan, again with Advanced Engineering Concepts.
Okay, all right, I'll open them up. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sean, are you there?
I am. Can everybody hear me?
We can, thank you.
Well, it worked this time, so that's great. Ryan did a great job of explaining exactly what's being proposed. We did have some discussion with Planning Commission regarding just some of the improvements that we could do along the southern side to kind of protect it from the North Crossing. I guess the one thing that I did want to end up noting is that there's a pretty big distance from the pavement to the existing or to the proposed buildings. We have about 135 feet from one of the edge of pavement of the North Crossing to the buildings, and about 80 feet to the property line. So there's quite a distance that's going through there. We're not opposed to making sure that we're doing some protection with vegetation. And certainly when we end up getting to the next phase and stuff, we'll certainly take what Planning Commission had recommended that we look at when we bring in our site plan. But with that, I'll go ahead and answer any questions that you guys may have.
Any questions for Mr. Bohan from council? Councilmember Gregor.
Thank you, President Weld. Mr. Bohan, one of the specific discussions at Plan Commission was regarding the potential for some sort of earth berm or something other than just trees that would help mitigate some of the noise from the North Crossing. Have you been able to do any more research into the feasibility of that? I know it's a pretty narrow strip of land that's proposed between the property line and the pavement for the driveway, but just kind of wondered if you had any updates for us on that.
I do not. The one thing that we may want to look at, and we may end up asking whether the DOT would allow us to go ahead on a portion of that property to be able to end up having a berm. So if all of a sudden it goes over their property a little bit, they do have 80 feet to the edge of pavement to be able to end up putting some trees and stuff on top of that. That's a potential. Otherwise, there isn't a lot of room from that access road that's along the south side. So we're trying to push that away from the buildings, have our stormwater facilities between the buildings and that pavement. We may look at during the actual site plan design, the next step, that maybe we flip-flop it and maybe the access goes a little bit closer to the building and the stormwater facilities are on the backside, and maybe it'll give us some added room that we may end up needing for a berm. But we'll certainly take a look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council for Mr. Bohan? I don't see any other questions from council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this agenda item? If so, please raise your hand. Again, I'll ask if there's anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll go on to agenda item number 3, which is a public hearing on an ordinance rezoning property located at the southeast corner of West Vine Street and Rosewood Lane from TR1A to R1. And again, good evening, Mr. Allen.
Good evening, Council President Weld and members of the council. Again, before you this evening is a request to rezone about 3.9 acres located at West Vine Street and Rosewood Lane. Property, you may recall, was recently petitioned to be annexed into the city of Eau Claire from the town of Union, and that was done before the council last month. Water and sanitary sewer are available along both Rosewood Lane and Vine Street. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, which shows this area to be low-density housing. You move to the next slide, please. Again, this shows the property in question and its location to existing single-family detached housing. Again, the request here is to move from the temporary zoning of TR1A to the permanent zoning of R1. Again, the property is in that overall area of single-family detached housing, and again, is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The applicant has not provided any additional details in terms of further subdividing the property through CSM or plat, but has indicated that their intention is to move forward with some single-family detached housing on this property. So with that, try to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Does council members have any questions for Mr. Allen? I don't see any. Was the applicant going to be here? Do you know, Scott?
No, the applicant was not present at the Plan Commission meeting.
Okay.
It is simply the property owner
Sure.
acting on their own behalf.
Okay. All right. Looks like there are no questions. Thank you very much. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this agenda item? If so, please raise your hand. Again, I'll ask if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Seeing none, we will close the public hearings and move into our public comment period. Is there anyone that is online now that wishes to speak in regards to the public comment period? If so, please raise your hand. And again, I am not seeing any. I guess before, I don't know if we wanted to check and see if there's any comments online. No? Okay. All right. With that, then, we will proceed into our legislative session. And for everyone that is logged into WebEx for today's meeting, please note that you'll only be able to listen and watch during the legislative session. There is no public discussion, but encourage all of you to stay with us and listen in. First item on the agenda is an update from City Manager Peters regarding COVID-19. Good evening, Mr. Peters.
Good evening, President Weld and members of the City Council. Just a brief update on kind of where we're at. We appreciate the opportunity at the council meetings to inform you and the community in terms of what has been happening with the City of Eau Claire, and particularly for our operations. Just a reminder that the best place to get information on the COVID-19 situation in the Chippewa Valley and in Eau Claire is at the website, which is on your screen right now. It is the COVID-19 Information Hub, and it is also where you find information for the Economic Development Task Force. There are also live updates every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3:30. They can be found on YouTube and also be live streamed from the website. There's also a call center that is open 5 days a week at 831-7425, the Facebook page, and then, of course, a hashtag. So plenty of ways to get accurate information about what's happening in Eau Claire related to COVID-19. In terms of the emergency declaration, just an update on some of the things that have happened since our last meeting. Of course, at the last meeting, you extended that resolution through 5 o'clock on May 26th, 2020. A couple of actions that have happened under that emergency declaration. We put some amendments together for the contract with Abivan. Abivan is the paratransit service that works complementary and in conjunction with our transit service for particular individuals who cannot ride the traditional buses that we have. We've expanded that contract to include any transit passengers who cannot enter the rear of the bus. So there's a group of passengers, because we've changed our operation, where everybody's expected to go into the back of the bus, and then we've also waived the fees for the bus. There are certain people in mobility devices that require the front of the bus and can't get their mobility devices in the back of the bus, and so we've expanded the paratransit, which is a direct pick up and drop off service to those passengers who otherwise would be expected to take the public transit but can't enter the front of the bus. Likewise, because of the number of people that we've limited on the bus, if there are people who cannot actually take the fixed route, they have the ability then to catch a ride through the paratransit service. So that was an amendment to the contract there. The fact that we combined both meetings tonight was also an executive order, because by ordinance, you're required to have your business meeting. You're not required to have your public hearings on Monday night. We can move that around. But in order to accommodate the public hearings, which had already been previously publicly noticed, looking at the agenda, we moved the business agenda tonight. So I believe that's the first time, at least in my 30 years here, that this has happened, where we've done both meetings on Monday night. So trying to be flexible, adaptive, and have best use of everybody's time, and minimize the amount of time that people have have interaction for possible exposure. Also, we've had some fire and police department grant applications related to COVID-19 funds that we're trying to recover. And then finally, it might not seem like a terribly large use of the executive order, but each year, all of the trash trucks have to be inspected for a seal that keeps the liquids from coming out onto the street. And this year, in order to minimize some exposures and provide some efficiencies, we're going to allow for a self-inspection. So all of the trash and refuse haulers will be able to do a self-inspection of the seal on the back of their trucks and send that in. So that's the declaration, emergency orders, and some of the things that have happened in the last 2 weeks. Just a quick update on the task force. It continues to be rolling on. There are 4 branches in the Economic Development or Economic Recovery Task Force: financial services, communication. Most of the work is being done in the sector. Last Friday, there was a significant website development through the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation that is providing guidance to various business sectors. We have aligned our Economic Recovery Task Force with those sectors, and so a substantial amount of work we have learned is being provided by the state of Wisconsin through that Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation website. We will be building off of that, using that as our foundation and putting local interpretation on it. And then, finally, the 4th sector is the employer and the employee connects piece. I would just point out we are in conversations with leaders in the Chippewa County and also Dunn County in how we can either connect or have a joint economic development recovery task force for the Chippewa Valley. So some positive conversations. I'm confident we'll be connecting and perhaps even being, combining our work efforts there between the 3 counties. So that's the task force. I also thought it might be worth talking a little bit about some of the projects and things that are being impacted by COVID-19 in our community. We have over 100 things within our organization that have either been delayed or postponed, and I thought I might highlight a few of them this evening. In terms of construction and development, construction projects that were underway or very close to being underway at the time that the pandemic kind of moved into our area continue pretty much to be moving forward. And other development is still being talked about, planned, although in some cases it is being paused or is going a little bit slower. Our work on the comprehensive plan is moving out to September. The participatory budgeting work is being reviewed with our consultant, as well as there's been some work with other communities that have active and up and running participatory budgeting programs to see how they're moving forward with their programs and how that might work with us and our new and budding programs. So stay tuned. We'll have an update on that for you hopefully later this week or next week. The CBDG and home funding review, which normally happens in June, is being pushed out to August. The census work in the community has been moved from March to late summer. Currently, all of our sports fields are closed and expected to stay closed for some time. The restrooms in our parks are closed at this time, although we are evaluating that with some frequency and looking to when it might work to open those. Interesting side effect we might not think of, but burials. A lot of the burials are on hold. The funeral homes have been holding off on burials until a time when they can have gatherings with them. The pool is currently not expected to open on Memorial Day weekend, but we're evaluating the timeline for the pool or whether we'll be postponing opening for the entire summer. But we hope to have some more information on that out later this week. Our water main replacement program is on hold. Most special events have been delayed or canceled, and there's quite a bit of publicity around those. Our parking study, we're hopeful we might be able to pick that back up around the end of June. And the CIP process, which we had hoped to happen earlier than usual, is pretty much back on its regular schedule, annual schedule of late May into June with an adoption in July. So those are some of the projects and things, services that we provide that are being impacted a little bit. In terms of our next steps, we just continue to remain flexible to the changing conditions because they are changing every day and the parameters in the world in which we're working in. We continue to work to understand the costs, the additional costs that we'll be incurring and the lost revenues. And again, at this point, generally speaking, unless the state significantly impacts our revenue streams from the state. We think that there will be adjustments, and it's not going to be a usual year, but we won't be having to take any dramatic steps, like layoffs or furloughs or things like that. But that's currently how it looks today. That can change, but for the most part, although we are losing certain revenues and we have additional costs in other places, we think we're going to be able to make that work within the fiscal parameters that we have. We are continuing to work very closely with the Incident Command in preparing the community for a peak or a surge that might be coming with the increase in cases with COVID-19. And of course, we're adjusting to and working particularly through the Economic Recovery Task Force on how to ease or as there's easing of the Safer at Home order, how to make a smooth transition as more and more businesses are expected to be opening. And then, of course, our work with the economic recovery efforts. So that's a quick summary. Again, since we combined both meetings, didn't want to take too much time on this portion of the meeting, but certainly would be open to any questions, comments, or feedback that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Council Vice President Emmanuel.
Well, and thank you, Mr. Peters, for the update. I really appreciate just all the categories you talked about, and specifically I was looking at just an update for the participatory budgeting. I appreciate the update that you gave to council on the Friday update. That was really helpful, and just know that I think this is a really important topic that we continue to move forward on. And wow, what a time to include more people into our community's process as we look to rebuild. And I think that aligns very well with one of the recovery task force of looking at vulnerable populations, which often participatory budgeting reaches. So just want to lift that up and share my appreciation for that. I do have a question, though, on behalf of, we'll say, a 3-year-old constituent who lives in my household. A big talk has been around when are the playgrounds, or what conversations might we be having around the playgrounds. And I'll add a short, tiny little story that my son has started playing make-believe in his crib, and that he crosses his arms and he tells me I can't go in the crib because he is the red tape, and he's turned his crib into a playground. So COVID-19, the reality of it has been introduced to even just gentle play with my son. So I was just curious, I'm sure other families are looking at that and wondering if you've received any guidance from the state.
Well, thank you for the feedback and the comment, and as you're demonstrating, as is your son, that the ability for all of us to get through this is being creative, and so congratulations to you and your family with that. In terms of the playgrounds, at this point, we do not have any further guidance on moving forward with the playgrounds. Of course, the playgrounds are currently closed because of 2 reasons. One, the close contact that children would have with each other, perhaps when they're playing on the play equipment, and secondly, the tactile, and picking up germs from, say, other children that were there that perhaps had been infected, or leaving virus there that then other children can pick up. So at this point, we really don't have any further guidance on when the playgrounds are open. I will share that we understand very clearly the importance of people being able to get outside in their small groups and be able to recognize the mental health and physical health and the importance of that. So in all of our decision making with our parks, with our trails, with the playgrounds, we are keenly aware of how important access to the ability to get outdoors with your small group and just be able to exercise and to refresh and to renew, and the importance that has for the mental health of our community. So we're doing everything we can to make as much available as we safely can, and certainly would be reviewing the data and the guidelines from the state and the health department, and getting as many things safely opened, as soon as we can. But at this time, the playgrounds do remain closed and will be for the foreseeable future.
Councilmember Berge.
Thank you, Council President, and thank you, Mr. Peters, for your update. I always appreciate the information. I have been fielding some questions on the north side about garage sales. You know, it may not seem like a big deal, but a lot of neighborhood associations were planning on spring garage sales, and I was wondering if, answering questions about the timeline, when the city might. I think they're on the assumption that the city is saying that we can't have garage sales, and I'm reframing it as the state order because it's not essential. We cannot have it. But if there's any information on garage sales, and if you don't know it now, maybe later, if you could send an update.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Berge. Excellent question, and you are correct. We follow the state guidance, and so, you know, you're right. They're not permitted at this point in time. What I would suggest is, so I did make a note of this, and we can work to, you know, have some specific guidance around that. You are correct. We are in garage sale season. And we can provide an update to that and where we're at with that with one of the 3:30 updates that Ms. Giese provides through the incident command at 3:30 on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So we'll provide some update on that and where the thought process is for that in the future.
Thank you.
Councilmember Zhang.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Mr. Peters. I want to express my gratitude towards all of the hard work that you've been doing in lieu of getting us back to our safety new norm. And thank you so much for working and partnering with other counties to tackling this COVID-19 issue. I was really appreciative to seeing the test center, the free test centers that has been up yesterday and today. And so my follow-up question was, as the task force continues to work on opening up businesses and getting us back to our normal life safely, are there any plans? I saw that there are going to be stations throughout the western Wisconsin. Do we have any plans on bringing that testing back as we open to making sure that our numbers are not continually increasing? Because I did see our numbers jumped.
Sure. I am not aware of another round with the National Guard for testing. I do know that increasing access to testing is a priority of the state and the health department, and that our incident command system is working towards that. And again, I would just encourage you to watch the website and also the incident command updates that are provided at 3:30 on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, because testing and access to testing is certainly a topic that's being talked about a lot, and there are many efforts underway to be able to continue to offer more testing. I would also just say that, again, thank you for the kind words. This is very much a partnership. There's a tremendous number of people and very talented people that are putting their shoulder to the harness here to pull this community forward and to be able to work in a cooperative and collaborative effort. And although I'm here at the podium today, there's an entire organization that is really working hard to make adjustments every day to what we do and how we do it, so that we can provide safe services for the community. And there's a huge number of people in our incident command system that are working to provide the guidance to the business community and then the task force to help us, again, be able to open and move forward in a way that is safe for the community, but also get the community back on its feet.
Thank you, Mr. Peters.
Looks like that's all of our questions.
Okay.
Thank you, City Manager Peters.
Thank you.
Next is our consent agenda. And do council members have any questions regarding the consent agenda or wish to remove any item for separate consideration? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, then on a motion by Councilmember Anderson and seconded by Councilmember Klinkhammer, the consent agenda is moved and discussion is in order. Is there any discussion from council in regards to the consent agenda? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson. Beaton.
Aye.
Bergy.
Aye.
Christofferson.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Gregert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Lohr.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
Zhang.
Aye.
Anderson.
She's muted, or she's not muted. She is muted. All right, well, that agenda item passes, and we will move on to proclamations, and we have 3 of them this afternoon. And if I could have Mr. Schultz, Deputy Chief of EMS for the Eau Claire Fire Department, meet me at the podium, I would appreciate it. Good evening. Good, how are you? So, in recognition of Emergency Medical Services Week, I have the following proclamation to share. Whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service, and the members of the Eau Claire Fire and Rescue are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And whereas access to quality emergency care significantly improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. And the emergency medical services system consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, firefighters, police officers, emergency medical dispatchers, nurses, physicians, educators, administrators, and trained members of the public. And the members of emergency medical services teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills, and citizens benefit daily from the knowledge and skills of these highly trained individuals. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishments of emergency medical services providers by designating Emergency Medical Services Week and by recognizing its theme of EMS Strong, Ready Today, Preparing for Tomorrow. Now therefore I, Terry Weld, President of the Eau Claire City Council, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of May 17th to the 23rd, 2020 as Emergency Medical Services Week in the City of Eau Claire, and urge citizens to recognize our emergency medical services teams, along with expressing appreciation for the value of their quality care and their dedication to both the profession and our community. Mr. Schultz, thank you.
Thank you.
Feel free to share a few words if you like.
Can we talk to Mike or?
Yeah, if you want, you can pull it right up to you.
Thank you, council members. I appreciate this. On behalf of the 911 dispatchers, the EMTs, the paramedics, the EMRs, firefighters, law enforcement, nurses, and physicians that make up the Eau Claire EMS team, we thank you very much for your support. Just a little highlights, a couple highlights on what we did this last year. We did have a record number of incidents. We responded to 8,200 EMS incidents for the year of 2019, and that has been increasing, pretty much increases on a yearly basis, although I think this year is going to be a little different. We also took part in an Ebola exercise. Eau Claire is a Category 2 Ebola transport service for the region, which means that if we have an Ebola patient in our community, then we are the ones who are going to get called to go transport them to Sacred Heart. That's the Category 2 hospital. So we do have to do training on that, and you could see the picture that was up on the screen of the specialized equipment that we have to utilize for that. We also did a mandatory airport drill and a mass casualty incident where the training plane was brought in for the firefighters to practice the fire side of it. And then also we did a mass casualty incident of that with, I think we had about 30 patients that the EMS crews had to triage and treat and then set up for transport on. That picture wasn't supposed to be in there, by the way. The last, or one of the other things we did was that we did training with both the Sheriff's Department and the City Police Department to train the law enforcement officers to give Narcan. So they can now give Narcan intranasally, and they have actually given that 23 times since we've did training with them on it. And then lastly, you know, again, I've talked about this before, but our cardiac arrest data, were able to restore a pulse on patients in cardiac arrest 30 out of 91 times, which is about a third. And it might not seem like much, but for that one person that gets a pulse restored and gets taken to the hospital and their family, that's a pretty big deal. So we have an outstanding group of EMTs, paramedics, and EMRs, and the rest of the team that is here to take care of the citizens and visitors to the Eau Claire area. I'm very proud of all of them, and I just want to again say thank you all for your support.
All right, if I can have Chief Wilkes speaking at the podium. Eau Claire Chief of Police. Here recognizing Police Week, and I have a proclamation to share in regards to that. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the week in which it falls as Police Week. And whereas the members of law enforcement in the city of Eau Claire and in the Chippewa Valley play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the citizens of Eau Claire. And it is important that all citizens know and understand the problems, duties, and responsibilities of their police department, and that the members of our police department recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence or disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression and intimidation. And whereas each year, Police Week is an opportunity to honor those peace officers who, through their courageous deeds, have lost their lives or have become disabled in the performance of duty. And whereas the Eau Claire Police Department has grown to be a modern and scientific law enforcement agency that increasingly provides a vital public service, and in doing so have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. Now therefore I, Terry Weld, President of the Eau Claire City Council, on behalf of the entire City Council, call upon all citizens of Eau Claire and upon all patriotic, civil, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 10th through May 16th, 2020 as Police Week in the City of Eau Claire, and urge citizens to recognize Peace Officers Memorial Day on May 15th with appropriate reverence commemorating police officers past and present, who, by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities, have rendered a dedicated service to their community. Chief Wilkes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President Weld and members of the City Council for your recognition of National Police Week and Peace Officer Memorial Day. I humbly accept the proclamation on behalf of the men and women of the Eau Claire Police Department. In the face of evolving adversity that our community is now facing, our police officers have dedicated themselves to making Eau Claire a safer and a better place to live. Our officers' devotion to ensuring peace and the principles of constitutional policing, oftentimes risking their own personal safety, demonstrates their courage, their compassion, and their professionalism. While our officers do not seek accolades or recognition, your support from Council and our supportive community does serve to strengthen our resolve and create additional meaning for our work. So thank you for your recognition this week, and thank you for your continued support.
The last proclamation, if I could have Mr. Pickens join me up at the podium. proclamation reads, whereas the year 2020 marks the 60th Annual Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association, and the theme is the rhythm of public works. And public works infrastructure, facilities, and services are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as water, sewer, storm, water management, streets, engineering, parking, equipment maintenance, buildings and grounds, and public transit. And whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community's residents greatly depend on these facilities and services, and the quality and effectiveness of the services, as well as the planning, design, and construction of facilities are vitally dependent upon the efforts and skills of our community services and engineering employees. And whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff community services and engineering departments and offices is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work that they perform. Now therefore I, Terry Weld, President of the Eau Claire City Council, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of May 17th through the 23rd, 2020 as National Public Works Week in the City of Eau Claire, and call upon citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and to recognize the contributions which public work officials make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. Mr. Richard, thank you to you and all of your staff.
Thank you, Council President Weld, members of City Council. As you mentioned, the theme for this year is the rhythm of public works. And this year, it's a challenge for public works employees and members of the community to think about their communities as a symphony of essential services, working in concert to create a great place to live. Every community has a rhythm, a heartbeat that reflects its essence and tempo of life. And Eau Claire embodies that. And on behalf of our community service workers and our engineering department, I want to thank you for recognizing the week of May 17th to the 23rd as Public Works Week. Thank you.
All right, well, if everyone's ready, we will proceed to our business agenda and begin with agenda item number 12, which is a resolution accepting and appropriating a BGA FY20 Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Program grant from the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Bureau of Justice Assistance. Because this item amends the budget, a 2/3 vote or 8 affirmative votes is needed for passage. Mr. Rokas, or Chief Rokas, I should say. Good evening.
Good evening again. Thank you, Council President Weld and members of the City Council. The resolution before you this evening is it's a resolution accepting and appropriating U.S. Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance grant for the coronavirus epidemic. In early April, the police department was notified that emergency funding was available for us in the sum of $43,422. We were awarded the grant. We will use that money, if approved, to recoup overtime costs related to adjustments that we've made to our patrol division schedule, adjustments that serve to protect our officers from cross-contamination, making some changes in the short term to make sure our services are available in the long term. And the money would also be used to purchase or acquire personal protective equipment and infection prevention supplies for the police department. There is no matching requirement for us at all, and I am prepared to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Does council have any questions for Chief Rokas? I don't see any. Thank you very much. On a motion then by Councilmember Beaton and seconded by Councilmember Zhang, this item is moved. Is there any discussion Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
Aye.
Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Greigert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer, Lore,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman, Zhang,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item,
Can you hear me?
we did, yep. You voted aye, correct?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Agenda item number 13 is a resolution accepting and appropriating an aquatic invasive species grant from the Department of Natural Resources to be used for the endothal treatments and limnological monitoring of Half Moon Lake. Because this item amends the budget, a 2/3 vote or 8 affirmative votes is needed for passage. Good evening, Mr. Solinger. Are you there?
I am. Thank you, Council President Weld and council members. Before you is a resolution authorizing the city to execute a grant agreement with the Department of Natural Resources. And as Council President Weld indicated, it is under the DNR's Aquatic Invasive Species Grant Program. So we will utilize the funding to continue the endothal treatments and limnological monitoring at Half Moon Lake. This continues our effort to implement recommendations of the lake management plan for Half Moon Lake. The city was awarded $88,209.75 through this grant, and through the 2020 capital improvement plan, $25,000 of state aids were already budgeted. So in addition to this resolution authorizing execution of that grant agreement, it is also authorizing an appropriation to the budget of $63,209.75, which represents the difference of our grant award and what was already appropriated in state aid through the 2020 capital improvement plan. The funding will be appropriated within the city Parks and Recreation Capital Fund. I would be glad to take any questions.
Does council have any questions for Mr. Solinger? I don't see any questions. Thank you. On a motion then by Councilmember Lohr and seconded by Councilmember Christofferson, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Berge,
Aye.
Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Greigert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer, Lore,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman,
Aye.
Zhang,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 14 is a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of up to $11,174,785 for waterworks system revenue bonds, Series 2020, and providing for other details and covenants with respect thereto. Mr. Solinger, are you still there?
I am. Thanks again, Council President Weld.
Thank you.
And council members. So this item authorizes the city to execute a financial assistance agreement with the state of Wisconsin to finance costs of our ongoing water treatment plant improvement, utilizing the state's Safe Drinking Water Loan Program. So the water treatment plant improvements were already budgeted for as part of the 2019 and 2020 capital improvement plan. And as you may recall, there was an additional appropriation for this project a few months ago. The loan, as I mentioned, will be made through the Safe Drinking Water Loan Program. It provides up terms of the up to amount of what is authorized as loan dollars that could be given to the city, it may not all be utilized pending final construction costs when the project is done. The financial instrument that will allow the city to make payment on this loan to the state is in the form of revenue bonds. So in addition to executing a financial assistance agreement with the state of Wisconsin, this resolution does also authorize the issuance of the revenue bonds in the amount up to what the loan will be. And that language, that sort of flexible up to language, is provided for in both the revenue bond documents as well as the financial assistance agreement. Payments on the revenue bonds and consequently the loan are pledged from revenues of the water utility. And the reason that we're doing it this way is the state drinking water loan program actually offers a subsidized interest rate. So compared to the typical process that you're familiar with, where we issue bonds in the private market, usually in the August to September timeframe, the state drinking water loan program actually offers a significantly lower interest rate. So comparing the interest rate that is afforded to us through this loan program compared to the bonds that we issued about a year ago, the 2019A bonds, we estimate a rough cost savings of about $500,000 over the 20 years that we will be repaying on this loan compared to if we did this through the typical scale of bonds in the private market. So a fairly significant cost savings that we felt was definitely worth it to take advantage of this loan program. The loan will close, if approved, on May 27th, and the final amortization schedule in terms of what we will pay in principal and interest will be set by the State Department of Administration upon what's called substantial project completion. So we'll reach a point where we're at about 95% complete with the water treatment plant, which we believe will occur about a year from now. And at that point, we will work with the DOA to establish that final amortization schedule. That's all I've got for you, so I'd be glad to take any questions on that.
Any questions from council for Mr. Solinger? I don't see any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
On a motion then by Council Vice President Emmanuel and seconded by Councilmember Berge, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to comment for the public's attention. I'm so proud and grateful when we're able to have these kinds of things come in front of council and celebrate the good work of our staff to save $500,000 over what would have been a typical capital improvement project. So it's always great to be able to put that money back in your pocket. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Christopherson. Any other discussion from council? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Christopherson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Gregert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Lohr,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman,
Aye.
Zhang,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Berge.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 15 is a resolution approving appointments and reappointments to various boards, commissions, and committees. I will read through the list of appointments and reappointments that are being proposed, beginning with Board of Review, Mary Anklam, John Arnett, Tom Jansen, and Robert Mayer Sr. Housing Advisory Board, Aaron Brewster. Housing Authority, Betty Deutsch. Housing Opportunities Commission, Karen Betzig Lundberg, Natasha Gomez, Austin Galbertson, and Judy Mosley, and Jennifer Chaput, Beth Crowell, and Scott Rogers, Cody Flipazik, Carrie Poser, and Tina Tyson. Plan Commission, a reappointment to Gregory Granlund, Eric Larson, and James Seymour, and a new appointment to Mary Prosnick. Police and Fire Commission, a new appointment to a 5-year term. Wesley Escondo, 7 Mile Creek Standing Committee, a new appointment to a 2-year term for Richard Arnold. The Sustainability Advisory Committee, a new appointment for a 3-year term to Douglas Faulkner and Anthony Switchenberg. And the Zoning Board of Appeals, a new appointment for Terry Peterson. Are there any questions from council in regards to the appointments and reappointments and those that have been brought before you? Seeing no questions, then on a motion by Councilmember Worthman and seconded by Councilmember Gregert, the slate of candidates is moved. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Council President Weld. I'd like to offer an amendment. Is now an appropriate time to do that?
It is.
Great. I would like to offer an amendment and move that Kim Kronk be nominated for the Police and Fire Commission. And I can speak to that if I get a second.
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second?
This is Catherine. I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to add Catherine Kronk as a candidate. I just need to get some clarification in regards to if we are just removing that name from the slate of candidates. Well, I think we have to. I'm sorry, Councilmember Anderson, why don't you go ahead?
Go ahead. What I was hoping to do was to consider Kim Kronk for that position tonight, if that's a possibility.
Okay. I guess, maybe I'll ask Mr. Peters if we should remove that. All right, we'll just give a minute for Mr. Nick to join us. And if we need to remove that police and fire. Oh, I'm sorry. City Attorney Nick.
Yes, Council President. How can I help?
Well, there's been a proposal for a new candidate to be added to the slate of candidates for the Police and Fire Commission. And I guess my question is, should we just remove the Police and Fire Commission from the slate of candidates, vote on those, or I guess looking for how you would recommend proceeding?
Well, I think it's a combination of mover and seconder intent, and of course, your discretion as chair. I heard a motion and a new individual named. So it wasn't expressly stated. Obviously, there's one position available, or at least that's my understanding. So I think inquiring as to mover and seconder's intent as to whether they then want to remove the appointment ago. It is unusual to do that. Appointments usually are made, recommended by appointments committee, and then confirmed by planning commission or confirmed by city council. Based on that kind of that statutory order of precedent, where for us locally by charter ordinance, the appointments committee is a stand-in for the mayor's position that otherwise would appoint. But ultimately, by local charter, city council has the final say on appointments. So if it desires to try to take all that action tonight, I think it can do so. So you just need to clarify which of those actions the mover and seconder intends, and then proceed as you would with any other motion amendment.
Okay, well, I guess for now, let's see if there are any other amendments or any other discussion in regards to the slate of candidates. Council Vice President Emmanuel.
Thank you so much, Council President. I'm just wondering, from procedure, and I did not talk to Emily before, Councilmember Anderson, so it's hard to see since we're not in the same room, but just to clarify, is this a motion on the floor, and if so, should we take up this motion, or are you asking for us to consider it later and then maybe take up these items in two separate transactions of everything but this, and then circle back to this other item?
I guess that was my plan, was to just pull this item off if it is the only amendment, and then we would vote on the other members and then come back to this item.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other amendments to the slate of candidates? Seeing none, then at this time I would like to remove the Police and Fire Commission from the slate of candidates in regards to approval of the appointments and reappointments for the various boards, commissions, and committees, and address that in a separate discussion and vote. And again, I'll defer to Mr. Nick. Are we okay with that?
Yes, I think you are. I'm not sure if I'm still unmuted.
You are unmuted.
Yes, you can choose to do it that way, right, as long as it's clear. So you'll take a vote on everything other than the Police and Fire Commission, and then return to that item as having been removed from the main motion and addressed separately.
All right, thank you. Is there any other discussion from council in regards to the appointments that I have read to you, with the exception of Police and Fire Commission, which has been removed from the slate of candidates? Any other discussion from council in that regard? Seeing none, City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Emmanuel.
Aye.
Gregert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Lohr.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman. Zhang.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Berge.
Aye.
Christofferson.
Aye.
So the slate of candidates, with the exception of Police and Fire, are approved unanimously. Back to the Police and Fire Commission, I guess, question. I know that there's been a motion and a second to add another name for consideration. Councilmember Anderson, did you have anything else you wish to share in that regard?
I can speak to my thinking on the motion, or were you thinking more in
Yes, I guess whatever you wish to share with us in regards to the motion of nominating Ms. Cronk.
Thank you very much, Council President Wild. We've made a bunch of appointments tonight, and I'm just very grateful for all the wonderful residents in our community who are sharing their talents and our time for the common good. And I'm really grateful for the work of the Appointments Committee, which has a challenge of, in this case, I'm thinking of the Police and Fire Commission especially, had the task of evaluating many strong applications for just one position. And so this is a 5-year appointment, which is significant on a commission, which is very important. And, I respect very much the wisdom of the recommendation that was made. But from time to time, our council, this body tweaks and adjusts recommendations from boards and commissions. We take information that we receive from boards and commissions and evaluate it and come to our decisions in our process. So I just want to share my perspective about this, 5-year appointment that I see is so integral to our city's strategic values and goals on all levels. And looking through these applications, which were very strong, I just felt that Ms. Cronk's application really stood out, and I thought she deserved additional consideration because of the content of her application. I think for Police and Fire Commission, we often focus on safety as one of our fundamental strategic goals, but also we think about equity as part of the role of our Police and Fire Commission and our police and fire and emergency services. They are key partners in building a more equitable community who often work directly with our most vulnerable neighbors. And this is exactly this experience professionally is kind of this link between advocacy for folks who are vulnerable and also being a health professional that kind of knows the staffing side and then can connect that with law enforcement. Looking through her application, I learned a lot about her experiences and career that just really made her stand out among this pool of strong applicants. She just has such relevant experience to this commission as a nurse. She's worked in the hospital emergency room where first responders bring their patients. She has been team lead registered nurse in the Eau Claire County Jail, and so she has kind of inside knowledge of our criminal justice institutions from a professional perspective. And she currently works as a nurse, primarily people who are on SSI and Medicaid and dealing with issues of housing insecurity, mental health, transit, and other barriers. And she sees how these problems create extra challenges for our police and first responders. And she just knows how that the staff needs that extra support. So, her experience is just so extensive, and that's what really stood out to me. And I just wanted to quote a little bit from her application here because the experience is so extensive. She's a member of the Eau Claire County Board, where she participates in the County Justice Peer Learning Network, which works to create solutions for justice that involve folks who have mental illness using a racial and ethnic disparities framework. She attended and graduated from the Eau Claire County Sheriff's Office Citizens Police Academy last winter because she wanted to know more about law enforcement and justice in the community. She traveled to a conference in Oklahoma last fall for the National Stepping Up Here Exchange to learn about practices and solutions that support law enforcement, health providers, and advocates through a racial equity lens. So to me, it seems that her experience just allows her to see how all the puzzle pieces of equity, wellness and health, law enforcement, and emergency services fit together. And so just her application just really stood out to me. And I just wanted to bring that up for further consideration tonight to the council as we deliberate, always of course guided by our strategic values. So thank you very much for considering.
I'm just going to ask the seconder. Council Vice President Emmanuel, did you care to share?
Thank you so much. Yes, I do. I want to just share tonight that I'm looking at really the experience and qualities in Ms. Cronk's application, and I do so with the respect and appreciation for the time our council colleagues did to vetting the applicants and to each applicant who put their name forward. So it's in that spirit that I wanted to lift up Ms. Crump's application. I think about how we build teams, and I'm inspired by some leadership tech. And I was reading something last week that really really stood out to me, I should say. And that's around how teams advance their organizational goals. And so there's a couple of statements that I'll flipped up from an author who wrote a book called Principles, and I don't need to go into the whole thing, but one of the principles he talks about is matching the person to the design when you're looking at building a team. And so as I look at the design, one of our goals on our strategic plan is to build a diverse workforce, and our council has demonstrated a fierce commitment to equity, in which we create conditions for all people to thrive and proactively address disparities in health, social, and economic prosperity. And then the other item that this author brings up for building strategic teams is once you know who you are looking for, then make your decision systematic and scientific. And so when I look at the systematic and scientific information or experience, in addition to what Councilmember Anderson shared, there's 4 other things that I want to lift up. Ms. Crump has been a long time committed to these issues of equity in supporting frontline staff and responders around poverty, mental health, CODA issues. She also has a commitment to working toward the overall holistic health of our community. So making sure this is more than black and white issues, but ensuring utilization of best practices as they evolve. And the last 2 is that she's completed the strategies for trauma awareness and resilience, week-long training through Peace Building Leadership Institute, and through the same institute, restorative justice practices. And last but not least, she's done community circles, which is a long-standing community-directed process most used for addressing issues of local crime in partnership with the Justice Program and creating respectful spaces to support victims. When I served on the Appointments Committee, one of the biggest challenges that we had, and I believe our city still has, is the doggedness to build a diverse workforce and to make sure that we are giving every last effort so that we can achieve these goals. And I've known Kim for over 10 years and served with her on a Juneteenth committee a long time ago, and she is absolutely committed to these issues. So I see that she has a professional skill set and a personal passion, which I think makes her an excellent candidate, and by far, on paper, I think she has the most qualities and experience to move forward.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Councilmember Klinkhammer.
Thank you. Couple questions. Was Ms. Cronk's name and application available to the Appointments Committee or Advisory Committee at the time they recommended Wesley
Yes.
Escondo? Is there any evidence that as the Chief Executive Officer for Big Brothers Big Sister that Mr. Escondo is not interested in equity? I don't think so. If we're going to make a change based on what the recommendation of the Appointments Commission Advisory Committee is, I think we should defer this. It should go back, and if they want to change their recommendation, we can look at it then. But I would not support replacing Mr. Escondo with a different person.
Councilmember Worthman.
Thank you, Council President Weld. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for recognizing me. And, I want to support this motion to amend and accept Kim Kronk for the Police and Fire Commission. And, sitting on appointments with my fellow council members and council president, I think we all recognize the high quality and characteristics that each of the applicants brings. But I, in the appointments committee meeting, moved and supported Kimberly Cronk because I really do think that her lifelong dedication to the issues that I think we need more of in our community around equity, diversity, inclusion, around alternatives to incarceration, around addressing issues of mental and physical health and trauma, in connecting our county and our city, and as well bringing the experience that she had working in our justice system, I think really lend themselves very strong to this position. I think, as was mentioned before, there are times when committee, commission, or board will make a recommendation, and city council may tweak that recommendation or may change it. And I think, that is well within our purview, which is why it's the advisory committee on appointments. I think beyond that, the fact of the matter is that, in my opinion, our strategic goals as a city council, I think, are incredibly important as we're thinking about a 5-year term on Police and Fire Commission, with the likelihood of the next appointment on this 5-person board being in 3 years. And keep in mind that oftentimes someone will apply and be reappointed for another 5-year term, meaning we're making a 10-year decision in terms of the kind of vision and long-term goals that we would like to see for the Police and Fire Commission. Keep in mind, again, this is one of 5 members of that board. So I, looking over Kim Cronk's application, she highlights these things that I think are very valued and needed on this board. And, if you had a chance to look at her application, hers is really the only one that touches on her experience and her wish to bring an equity, diversity, and inclusion lens to the Police and Fire Commission. None of the other applicants mentioned that or discussed it as a priority, and frankly, this is something that I think matters. So I am supportive of Councilmember Anderson and Vice President Emmanuel's motion to accept Kimberly Cronk as the Police and Fire Commission member.
Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you, Council President Weld. I know Ms. Cronk, and she is an outstanding individual. I saw in the packet preparation that this nomination was not unanimous in coming to the council, but because it was not unanimous, I don't feel comfortable in supporting a change at this level. I would join Councilmember Klinkhammer in sending this back to the appointments to boards, commissions, and committees agenda and ask them to reconsider their recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Christopherson. Is there any other discussion? I guess City Attorney Nick, if I could ask for some clarification in regards to our choices of voting on the amendment, voting on the suggested appointment, or postponing and sending it back, or not necessarily postponing, but sending it back to advisory to resubmit. How do we get to that point as far as deciding on one of those?
Well, the matter is before council on recommendation of the appointments committee for Mr. Escondo, and there's a pending motion to amend to remove Mr. Escondo, as I understand it, and appoint Ms. Cronk. So
Okay.
You know, so
All right.
either now or then, I mean, there's the potential to postpone or to refer to committee, but that's an option you have now, or should you know, the amendment pass, but it's not necessary. Again, there's a committee recommendation in front of you. You know, I wasn't at that meeting, but either through the dialogue that's happened here tonight, or from my understanding of the minutes, you know the line, at least at their last meeting of the appointments committee, which was a 2-to-1 vote with the majority appointing Mr. Escondo. So unless the notion is to you know, appoint someone other than those two individuals, you know, honestly, I'm not certain that there's a need to send it back to appointments. You know, that's the status out of appointments, and you know, the matters in front of you all as city council on who you want to appoint.
Okay.
PFC.
All right. Thank you. Is there any other discussion in regards to Councilmember Lohr?
Thank you, President Wall. I think that I also was not supporting that we approve tonight. I'd like to send this back as Council Sufferson and Council Dave. I think that we send it back to have the reappointment advisory reappointment in the vote. When they send it back to us, and we will approve it. I think that for tonight, I will not be supporting right now. Thanks.
Is there any other discussion from council? Councilmember Gregor.
Yeah, thank you, President Wells. I did get a chance to read the applicant's information, and I think, we do have a choice between some pretty qualified candidates. It's kind of a hard thing for me to, somewhat undecided here, I guess you could say. I do think it is ultimately something that the appointments committee has responsibility to potentially do a little bit more work on researching and potentially interviewing these candidates. I'm not sure what kind of precedent there is for that. What typically occurs with regard to if there's phone conversations that occur between appointments committee members and candidates. Not sure what exactly is permissible either, so it does seem like there could be a potentially different outcome coming out of appointments committee based on how close the vote was, but I'm just because I may have voted differently if I had been on appointments committee doesn't necessarily give me enough confidence that it really should be something that the council changes at this juncture, especially after last time we had an appointment for police and fire, there was a change at the council level. So I'm kind of undecided here about how I'll vote in this particular instance, but I guess if any council members have any insight as to how, if this were to go back to appointments, what that would look like in terms of further discussion and research, and if there's any legal opinion about what exactly would not be appropriate, I might be interested in hearing that too, because I think they're both candidates that we could potentially learn more from and help at least the appointments committee decide a bit more of a potentially unanimous decision. I don't really know. I'm just putting that out there as something I would potentially support if it going back to appointments rather than being decided here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gregor. Councilmember Berge.
Thank you, Council President. So I guess I was, before Councilmember Gregor said gave those options, and I don't know if those are options with interviewing, but I was going to say that, I voted in favor of Mr. Escondo, at mean, they're both, everything that has been said about Ms. Cronk tonight is true. I mean, she's a wonderful asset to our community, and she does such great work. I'm impressed by her, a lot of the work she does. She's a great advocate. Mr. Escondo, too, like, I think I voted for him in the appointments committee because he does, you know, he leads the diversity task force for the chamber. And I have heard of the work that he's done there, you know, and I've seen work come out of that task force. The experience with the children too, with the Boys and Girls Club, leading that organization. So that's why, I mean, they're both good candidates. I guess you know, staff supported Mr. Escondo and then, you know, in our meeting. And then, he has been in the bank for a little over a year as well. So, I mean, if we could appoint two, that would be easy, but that's not in front of us. So I did go with Mr. Escondo, and I was just gonna say I will vote for him again tonight, support him tonight. And if it were to go back to committee, I would still probably vote, I would still support him as well. Again, Mr. Greger, or Councilmember Greger's questions about interviewing, those are interesting questions, and maybe that would change it. But as things stand now, I continue to support my previous vote on the appointments committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Berge. I guess I'd offer just a little bit of history. Last year, again, Mr. Escondo was recommended by the advisory committee unanimously from that committee, as well as recommended from staff. This year, again, it was also recommended from staff, and 2 of the 3 advisory committee members, including myself, voted in support of Mr. Escondo. So I think, you know, that says a lot to me, first of all, before getting into too much about him as an individual. I was contacted earlier today as well from one of the commissioners, and they spoke highly of Mr. Escondo and look forward to, you know, working with him in the future, and again, was very supportive of that nomination. When I look at characteristics of this role and this position and the duty that they serve, I look at professionalism, and I certainly believe he has that. He's very respectful, and at the same time also very well respected from this community and community peers and community stakeholders, and every part of our community he has touched and has their respect. He's very conscious of our community, wants to serve our community. As Councilmember Berge mentioned, he's been in our resource bank since January of 2019. And if I remember correctly, Ms. Cronk just joined our resource bank in March of this year. So I think his intent there and his desire to serve this community, especially at this role, shows with his, and that even still having that taken away last year and keeping his name in the hat this year, I think really says a lot about a person that really wants to stand up for what they believe in. I believe he's a great communicator. He has a lot of experience interviewing people and reading people and understanding people. He already serves a very vital role in our community, a very trusted role in our community with his leadership with Big Brothers and Big Sisters. And I think the number of people that he has been a part of, you know, throughout his years here and in that role has made a mark on our community, including, you know, with many people that we see and work with and talk to every day. So I think for that reason alone, I really feel like he's qualified, he's dedicated, he's passionate, he's sincere, and this is something he really truly believes in and will respect moving forward. I went by a billboard yesterday, and all it said was, "Be kind and forgiving." And it was a huge billboard. And I thought about that all day yesterday and today about everything that's going on in our world right now. And I just look at, where we are and what's happening to everybody around us and the residents of our city. And I think it's important that we're not sending a negative message to those that maybe want to participate in this role. And I almost feel like that's coming out a little bit. And I feel like now more than ever, we should be lifting each other up and supporting each other and finding ways to help and support those that are struggling and even those that are just, looking for something more. And so I hope that we can continue to send positive messages to our community. And I think in this case, it's trusting our advisory committee and trusting our staff and making sure that we continue to show that support for the role that they have. And I really do feel that now more than ever, it's important that we continue to show our support to Mr. Escondo. So, Councilmember Worthman, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Council President. And I really appreciate your comments this evening. I think coming back to the motion on the floor to accept Kimberly Kronk to the Police and Fire Commission, one of the things that I really looked at is her experience. Now, you and I, having served on appointments, know that people put in their applications, sometimes it's a year ago, sometimes it might be 5 years ago, they put in their applications, but that doesn't matter necessarily when we're thinking about who is the best fit and who has the best qualifications for this commission. And so I didn't factor in the time that the application came in. I am really looking at who I think is the best fit from a qualification standpoint. On top of that, when I voted in Appointments Committee to support Kimberly Kronk, I was not factoring in the appointment last year to Police and Fire Commission, where the City Council found that Ms. Salika Duckworth-Lawton was the preferred candidate for Police and Fire Commission. That was also not in my considerations for this position, because truly the thing that matters is whether we feel that for the next 5, potentially 10 years, the person is a good fit for this commission. So to me, those are really the things that matter the most. And I will say, I think lastly, one of the things that I think, I would like to see more of in the Police and Fire Commission, and frankly, I think a lot of community members do as well, which is that the Police and Fire Commission is essentially the citizen accountability of our police and fire department, in the sense that they review the policy, they decide how we hire and who we hire, and they review people's complaints potentially of the police and fire. So in that way, I want someone who is independent in their thinking, who asks the hard questions that need to be asked, even if it's not popular to do so, and who brings independent streak to this commission. Frankly, that is the kind of person that Kimberly Kronk is, and that's a very strong reason why I think we ought to consider appointing her for this position.
Thank you, Councilmember Worthman. Councilmember Gregor, did you have another comment? Is there any?
No, I didn't at the moment. I left my hand up on accident.
All right. Council Vice President Emmanuel.
Thank you, Council President. And I understand about leaving hands up. That was my crime last meeting. I just wanted to say and clarify that this is around, in my opinion, this decision is about experience and qualifications for a very long-term position. And I want to say that I do not feel in any way, shape, or form this has to do about being nice or kind to anybody. This is about making a strategic appointment who would work to advance the hard work goal that the council and staff have put together. So I just want to be clear, this is not about not being nice to somebody. I think that our responsibility is evaluating criteria and then advancing someone on their merit and their experience. And that's just it for me, but I just want to be really clear about that.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Any other discussion? Seeing none, then I guess the motion now before us is if we wish to replace Ms. Cronk name, or to vote Ms. Cronk name in place of Mr. Escondo's. And we have a second and we have discussion. Councilmember Gregor?
Yeah, thank you, President. Well, I do kind of want to go back to the question of what typically, is appropriate for appointment committee members in terms of interviewing or talking to references, because obviously all that information is provided in the application. So I guess it sounded like potentially one of the references took the initiative to contact President Weld, and maybe it was someone else, another commissioner, but I guess I'm just kind of curious in exploring that a little bit more, just because this is a really important appointment. I will totally agree with that, and it's giving me some pause, right, as to like how well I can decide who I would prefer, without doing that myself, frankly. So maybe there could be an option of the council even just postponing this decision until our next meeting, just so the council itself can make an informed vote. So I'm not sure if there's any opinion from staff on that, and also what exactly are some of the staff perspectives on this with regard to the recommendation of Mr. Esconda? What are some of the specifics of the reasoning for that? Would be one of my other questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Worthman, did you have another comment?
Just to Councilmember Greiger, I think those are all opportunities, and if potentially the vote is taken on this amendment, that could be a motion, or if you wish to seek more time, as I understand from our city attorney, you could make a motion at this juncture to postpone, I believe, but I think, that it could go either way. But I think all of those, as an appointment committee person, in my time on there, all of the things that you have talked about are done and can be done in terms of talking to the references, or on occasion, as well, talking to the people who have applied. I've definitely made those phone calls, and as part of kind of collecting the information you need to make a good decision.
Thank you, Councilmember Worthman. As I understand it, we can, and Councilor, City Attorney Nick, feel free to weigh in. If somebody wishes to make a motion to postpone or to send this back, can that be made now, or do we need to vote on the item before us?
Was that framed as a question for me, Council President?
Yes, it was. I'm sorry.
Yeah, motions to postpone or refer are always in order at any time, but again, are not necessary. Council's prerogative or any member's prerogative to make the motion, but otherwise you're at a point of calling a vote on the amendment.
Okay. All right, thank you. If there's no other discussion, Madam City Clerk, in regards to replacing the names of Mr. Escondos with Ms. Cronk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Gragert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
No.
Lohr,
No.
Weld,
No.
Worthman,
Aye.
Zhang,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
No.
Christofferson,
No.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
So that item, the name then replaces Mr. Escondos on the slate of candidate for police and fire. Do we need to move and second that? Yeah, so on a motion by Councilmember Anderson and seconded by Councilmember Klinkhammer, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Klinkhammer.
I make a motion that this appointment be referred back to the Appointments Committee, Advisory Committee, and have them thoroughly vet these two individuals and come back following their next meeting with a recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion to send this back to the Advisory Committee and a second from Councilmember Lohr. Councilmember Klinkhammer, did you wish to speak to that? Any further? Councilmember Lohr?
Thanks, President Wall. I think that I'd like to have the advisory committee to take a look at these two applicants, since they are both qualifications are good. But I still like them to evaluate both applicants and then making recommendations, send it back to us for council to approve it. I still like the idea, so I will be second to support that.
Thank you. Councilmember Worthman.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you for calling on me. I could go either way on this. I feel like I suppose I'm not entirely sure how much change there's going to be in people's positions, but I could be open to this. I'm kind of wanting to hear from other council members what their thoughts are on postponing it. But my sense is that there probably wouldn't be that much change. We would probably run through the same exact process we just did with the same outcome.
Thank you, Councilmember. Council Vice President Emmanuel.
Thank you, President Wells. I would have concerns about sending this back from a process standpoint. I don't think it's, it seems that it's a hard task to deliver on when council isn't giving criteria on what that looks like. I think it would be an excellent thing to put on the appointments work plan and bring back to council from a process standpoint. But I think that, I think if we're candid, I think we know where council's at. And so, at any rate, I wouldn't support it tonight, although I also hear very sincerely that council is wanting to have more unanimous support, and I really appreciate that. It's an excellent quality about this council, is trying to figure out where is our space and place of unity. So I see that and I recognize it, and I think it's a good thing. For myself, I would be voting no on the amendment.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Council President Weld. I certainly, feel divided on this motion to postpone. I understand the desire to find more information and do more fact gathering. That always feels more comfortable with a big decision. But at the same time, I think that, without kind of clear criteria set by council or set as part of the appointment committee kind of program going forward, I'm not quite sure how effective additional deliberation would be. So I probably will not support this. Thank you.
Councilmember Zhang.
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to express that even if we are sending this back, if that's a motion that Council Plankhammer's motion, my thought process is without having a rubric for like the process of how do you differentiate what is priority for these two candidates, just looking at, obviously they're equally well experienced, but it would be great to see what the what the committee is looking for to really differentiate that. So without that, I'm not seeing how valuable it would be if we're going to send it back to the table without that rubric or without having that differentiation.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Zhang. I see a lot of hands up. I'm not sure if Councilmember Worthman, Council Vice President Emmanuel, Councilmember Anderson.
I'm sorry, I had my hand up and I didn't need to.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Gregor.
Yeah, thank you, President Weld. I feel like this is really a decision that's up to the whole council at this point. That's where I'm starting to leave it. Maybe all of us just need more time. So I'd probably vote no on this, because then we can maybe have a discussion about just delaying this final vote by the council. That all of us can participate in any amount of research and discussion with the candidates or their references that we choose to before that. So that's kind of where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gregor. Any other discussion? Seeing none. Again, a motion to push this back to advisory committee. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Lohr,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman,
No.
Zhang,
Sorry, no.
Anderson,
No.
Beaton,
No.
Bergy,
No.
Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
No.
Greigert.
No.
And that is defeated. Back to the original motion then for Ms. Cronk to be appointed to the Police and Fire Commission. Is there any other further discussion? Councilmember Greigert.
Yeah, thank you, President Weld. I'd like to make a motion to postpone this decision by the council until our next meeting, which I guess would be Tuesday the 26th, is that right?
Yes. Anything more in regards to what?
I guess would you like me to go into the reasoning for that?
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, we'll seek a second. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Councilmember Klinkhammer is second to the motion. All right, go ahead, Mr. Greigert.
Council President, can I ask a question, clarification?
Certainly.
This is polling for our city attorney, but if we postpone the action on this, does it come back to us with the name of Kimberly Cronk as in the resolution, or does it come back with Wesley Escondo? How does that work in terms of the action we took this evening?
City Attorney Nick.
This motion to postpone is accepted.
Yes, thank you for the question and the recognition, Council President. Well, if passed, it would return on the 26th in the same form it exists now. So it would be the motion as amended to appoint Ms. Cronk to the Police and Fire Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Greigert.
Thank you, President. Well, just as a further clarification from Mr. Nick, since the council already voted to amend, would it be, if the council wanted to make a different decision, like back to Mr. Escondo, would that still be possible at that juncture to amend again?
City Attorney Nick.
Thank you. Yes, the motion would be before you, and so it still could be amended. Typically, rules of parliamentary procedure wouldn't allow you to just amend and amend and go kind of back and forth pointlessly. But at least my advice to chair would be, if this is passed by council, it would seem that it would be passed with the intent to do, additional inquiry, provide time to consider the action. And so at that point, I think motions to amend, whether to Mr. Escondo or anyone else, would be in order. Again, at council members' discretion and certainly the overall will of council of whether those would actually be adopted. But I think they would be in order.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be my intent, at least, of my motion.
Did you wish to speak to your motion, Councilmember Greigert?
Thank you, President Weld. I guess as I said earlier, and I know I've been kind of on the fence here, so I'm hoping I'm not contradicting myself at all throughout this process, but I think ultimately, it's come to the point where it's up to the council that is most interested in, making a decision as a body here. And I'm certainly interested in having more conversations with the applicants and doing more research, and so that's why I'm personally interested in this option. So if there's others that are interested in that, then it would be a good reason to vote yes. Thank you.
Councilmember Christofferson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not going to support the, this motion to postpone. My concern this evening as we discuss this issue is the amount of authority that this commission has to present their vetted candidates, and the fact that it was not supported in that commission, even though that candidate was considered. To me, it's the process. And I think that what needs to happen as a result of this really well articulated discussion would be to go back as a board and wonder about how best do you want to do your work, and when you send recommendations, do they need to be all unanimous, or those kinds of things. But to come to the council and ask to actually trump the recommendation, I don't think is appropriate and shouldn't be the consistent action of the council. And that's not in any way to take away from the qualifications of the individuals we're considering, but I'll continue to vote in support of the candidate that was brought by that commission. Thank you.
Councilmember Worthman? Is there any other discussion in regards to the motion to postpone? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Weld,
No.
Worthman,
No.
Zhang,
No.
Anderson,
No.
Beaton,
No.
Berge,
No.
Christofferson,
No.
Emmanuel,
No.
Greigert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Lohr.
No.
So that motion is defeated. Again, back to the original motion of Ms. Cronk being appointed to Police and Fire Commission. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Worthman,
Aye.
Zhang,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
No.
Christofferson,
No.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Greigert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
No.
Lohr,
No.
Weld.
No. And that item passes. Agenda item number 16 is an ordinance rezoning a property located at 2113 Brackett Avenue from R1 to C3P, and to adopt a general development plan with site plan for an office with storage and warehouse facilities. Does the council member have any additional questions for Mr. Allen? Seeing none, and on a motion by Councilmember Beaton and seconded by Councilmember Zhang, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, Councilmember Christofferson.
Thank you, President Weld. I just want to make the very quick comment that it's really a nice infill on that stretch of Brackett Avenue because it's not a heavily retail-oriented, so it's using that property in a very attractive and useful way. And I just think it's a great project. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Zhang,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
Aye.
Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Gregert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Lohr,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman.
And that item passes unanimously. An ordinance rezoning property located at the southwest corner of Jeffers Road and Prairie Lane from C2 to R3P and to adopt the general development plan for multifamily apartment buildings. Does council have any additional questions for Mr. Petrie? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll. I'm sorry, I need to move it. On a motion then by Councilmember Lohr and seconded by Councilmember Christofferson, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
Aye.
Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Gregert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Lohr,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman,
Aye.
Zhang.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 18 is an ordinance rezoning property located on the southeast corner of West Vine Street and Rosewood Lane from TR1A to R1. Does council have any questions in regard for Mr. Allen in regards to the discussion earlier? Seeing none, then on a motion by Council Vice President Emmanuel and seconded by Councilmember Berge, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
Aye.
Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Gregert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Lohr,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman,
Aye.
Zhang,
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. That moves us to announcements. Are there any announcements from City Manager Peters? All right. I have one announcement, if I could keep everyone here with us for a moment. Today is a special day. It is somebody's birthday, actually, and our city manager, Mr. Peters, is celebrating his birthday here with us this evening, and we are very appreciative of that. And I think if we all can wish him a very happy birthday, and sometime in the future, when we can gather together, we can all share and celebrate maybe more birthday style, but for now, if we can all maybe just wish Mr. Peters a big happy birthday. So happy birthday, Mr. Peters.
Happy birthday.
Any other announcements from council? Again, look forward to seeing everybody online early Thursday morning. Thank you to all. Have a great night. You can join in person as well. Yep. Any other questions? Seeing none, if there is no objection from council, we are adjourned.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689, or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148.